Alex had always been the kind of person who saw value in things others discarded. The junkyard was his sanctuary, a place where broken machines, discarded parts, and forgotten tools told stories of a world long past. Most people saw the junkyard as a graveyard, a place of rusting failure. But to Alex, it was a treasure trove of possibilities. Each day, he scavenged through piles of scrap metal, searching for parts he could breathe life into. A wire here, a gear there, and before long, he had crafted something useful again. But today, something caught his eye, something that seemed out of place. Buried under a pile of old weathered tires, there was an odd large metallic object. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than an outdated robot, perhaps from an ancient project long forgotten. But there was something in the way the sunlight hit its dull metal surface, a glimmer, like a hidden secret trying to reveal itself. Curiosity tugged at him as he approached the strange object. He knelt down, his hands already feeling the familiar coolness of the metal as he brushed away the dirt and rust. The robot was old, far older than anything he'd ever seen. Its design was unlike the ones he'd worked on before, its angular frame and sharp lines a sharp contrast to the sleek, modern machines that populated the junkyard. This wasn't just any robot. This was something different. He studied it carefully, noting the rust and wear on its body. The robot's left arm was badly damaged, hanging limply from the shoulder joint. Its chest panel was dented, and its legs were stiff, suggesting it hadn't moved in a long time. But despite its battered appearance, there was a strange sense of dignity about it. The robot had once been something significant. Alex was sure of it. After a few moments of hesitation, Alex made his decision. He wasn't the kind of person to walk away from a challenge. His mind was already racing with possibilities. This robot could be the perfect project. If he could get it working again, maybe it could fetch a good price. At worst, it would serve as a source of parts. He grinned to himself, imagining how impressive it would be to restore such an enigmatic piece of machinery to life. He spent the next few hours carefully examining the robot. Its intricate design intrigued him. It was clear that whoever had built it had a level of skill far beyond that of ordinary engineers. The circuits inside were unlike anything Alex had ever encountered, glowing faintly even in their dormant state. His fingers were covered in grease and dirt as he pried open the panel on its chest, exposing the robot's core. A cold, metallic orb sat inside, nestled in the center like a beating heart. Alex felt an odd sense of reverence as he gazed at it. There was something almost alive about the orb, a strange energy emanating from it. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should just leave the robot as it was. But then, the familiar urge to repair and restore overtook him. This robot might be more than just a machine. It could be a breakthrough, a step toward something larger. He had to fix it. The thought of bringing it back to life, of hearing it speak again, was too compelling to ignore. With determination, Alex set to work. He replaced broken circuits, rewired damaged connections, and slowly but surely began to breathe life back into the robot. Hours passed, but he barely noticed. The robot's eerie stillness remained, though, making Alex feel uneasy. There was something about it, something that didn't feel quite right. It was as if the machine wasn't just inert, but waiting for something, for someone. He finally reached the final step, powering it up. His fingers hovered over the switch for a moment, unsure of what he was about to unleash. The workshop was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city outside. He took a deep breath and flipped the switch. The robot's eyes flickered to life. They glowed briefly, the light harsh and unnatural in the dim room. Alex stepped back, his heart racing. For a moment, he thought the robot might be malfunctioning. Its limbs twitched unnervingly, and then, just as quickly as it had awakened, the eyes dimmed again, leaving only a faint glow behind. The robot sat motionless for several moments, as if processing the events around it. Then, a voice, mechanical but strangely clear, emanated from its speakers. Mission. Activation. required. Alex froze. The words were not what he expected. He had assumed the robot would have a standard startup sequence, maybe a greeting or a request for repairs. But this was something entirely different. The robot's voice was calm, almost detached, but the words carried a weight, a sense of urgency. The voice repeated the same words, and this time Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. Mission, activation, required. It wasn't just a message, it was a command. His mind raced as he tried to comprehend what was happening. What kind of mission? What was this robot really? It had been abandoned here, in a junkyard, forgotten and discarded. But why? What had it been created for? And why did it seem so aware? Alex hesitated for a moment before speaking, unsure if the robot could understand him. What mission? He asked softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. The robot's eyes flickered again, this time focusing on him with an intensity that made Alex's heart beat faster. For the first time, the robot seemed to be looking at him, truly looking at him. Activate core. Protect. The voice trailed off, as if the robot was struggling to remember something important. Then its head turned slightly, as if scanning the room. Core activation. Critical, it murmured. Alex didn't know what to make of it. The robot's words didn't seem to match its appearance. This was no ordinary machine. There was something ancient about it, as though it had been waiting for something, someone, to bring it back online. The silence stretched on, thick with anticipation. Alex's hand hovered near the robot's chest again, where the glowing orb lay, hidden beneath layers of metal and wires. He felt a pull, an irresistible force drawing him toward the core. Something told him that touching it would set something into motion, something that could change everything. But before he could make his decision, the robot's eyes blinked once more, and a low mechanical sound filled the air, like a deep internal hum. The air in the room seemed to thicken, as if the very atmosphere had changed. Something big was about to happen, and Alex had no idea what he was getting into. With a deep breath, Alex reached for the core. The moment his fingers brushed against the smooth surface, the room erupted with a strange energy, and he knew then that this was no ordinary repair job. This was just the beginning. The air in the workshop was thick with tension, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed some invisible line. The hum of the robot's internal mechanisms filled the room, its strange, flickering eyes now locked onto him, with an intensity that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He had touched the core, just a light brush, but the moment his fingers made contact, everything had changed. The room seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't explain, like the very walls were alive with anticipation. The robot remained still, its gaze unwavering, as though waiting for something. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the low hum coming from the orb inside its chest. Alex took a step back, instinctively feeling the need to distance himself from whatever strange force he had unleashed. He hadn't expected any of this. All he had wanted was to fix a broken machine, to restore something to life, to prove to himself that he still had the skill and the patience to make something work. But this was different. This was something far beyond his understanding. Core. Activation. Critical. The robot repeated, its voice soft but steady, almost robotic in its cadence. Alex had expected it to speak again, but not in this way. The words weren't just a command. They carried a sense of urgency, as if the robot was trying to warn him, to communicate something much more profound than a simple startup sequence. What do you mean? Alex asked cautiously, his voice barely more than a whisper. His fingers hovered near the robot's chest again, drawn to the orb that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. His curiosity was a flame he couldn't extinguish, but the uncertainty that tugged at him was becoming harder to ignore. The robot's eyes flickered, then went dim, as if it were processing something, struggling to find the right words. A few moments passed in silence before the robot's voice broke the stillness once more, but this time, The words were different. Mission. Activation required. Protect Earth. It said, the words more deliberate, as though it were trying to remember something long buried in its memory banks. Alex's stomach tightened. Protect Earth. What kind of mission was this? The words seemed to echo in his mind, filling the air with a heavy, ominous tone. He stepped back again, uncertainty growing in his chest. The robot had been dormant for so long, and now it was suddenly speaking of some mission to protect Earth. But from what? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more pressing than the last. Alex glanced around the workshop, half expecting something to change, as if the very room itself might reveal some hidden clue. But the workshop was quiet, save for the soft humming of the robot and the faint glow of the orb. Nothing was coming to life around him, nothing out of the ordinary. It was just him and this strange machine, locked in a silent understanding that neither could fully grasp. The robot's gaze flickered again, and for a brief moment, Alex thought he saw something more in its eyes, something like fear or perhaps desperation. But before he could process what he had seen, the robot spoke again, its voice low and distorted this time, as if struggling against some internal malfunction. Mission, incomplete. My core, compromised. The robot's words faltered, as if it was remembering something it had long forgotten. The light in its eyes dimmed further, and it slumped forward slightly, as though exhausted from the effort of speaking. Alex's mind raced. What was this robot saying? The core, compromised. Was it malfunctioning, or was it trying to tell him something more significant? He had no idea, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just a regular repair job. This robot was part of something much larger than anything he could have imagined. He had only touched it out of curiosity, but now he felt as though he had awakened something that had been lying dormant for far too long. Suddenly, a soft beep came from the robot's chest, followed by another set of strange, cryptic words that seemed almost too rushed to understand. System. Reboot. Activating. Danger. Imminent. The robot's voice cut off abruptly, and the lights in the workshop flickered as if reacting to the sudden surge of energy within the machine. Alex's pulse quickened. What kind of danger was the robot referring to? He had repaired the machine, but now it seemed like the more he tried to understand it, the more questions he uncovered. The room suddenly felt colder, and Alex instinctively rubbed his arms, the chill creeping through him, despite the warm, muggy air in the shop. His thoughts were racing. He had to know more. He had to understand what was going on with this robot. But something inside him warned that the answers he sought might come at a terrible cost. The robot's chest began to glow brighter, the orb pulsing more rapidly now, casting an eerie light across the walls. Alex felt his breath catch in his throat. Whatever this robot was, it was about to do something. The energy was building, and he could sense it in the very air around him, a rising pressure that made his heart race. Protect. Protect. The robot repeated, its voice barely more than a whisper, as if it were trying to say something important, but couldn't quite get the words out. Alex leaned in closer, his instincts telling him that something critical was about to happen. Suddenly, without warning, the orb in the robot's chest flared to life, brighter than before, and the lights in the workshop went out. The entire room plunged into darkness, save for the blinding glow coming from the robot's chest. Alex staggered back, his heart pounding in his chest as the silence enveloped him. The strange energy was now almost tangible, thick and oppressive, as if the very air were charged with the power of the robot's awakening. In the darkness, the robot's voice broke the silence once more, but this time, it was different. It wasn't just speaking, it was commanding, its tone urgent, forceful. Mission. Activated. Earth's survival depends on it. Alex's breath hitched as the words settled into his mind, and in that moment, he realized the weight of what he had just uncovered. This wasn't just a malfunctioning machine. It was part of something much larger, something far beyond his understanding. The mission it spoke of was real, and it was happening now. The Earth's survival, his survival, was somehow tied to this robot and the secrets it held. And for the first time, Alex understood that whatever came next, there was no turning back. The cold darkness of the workshop seemed to press in on Alex, as if the very walls were closing around him. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The room, once familiar and cluttered with tools and spare parts, had become a place of mystery and tension. The robot's chest continued to pulse, a steady rhythm that echoed in the quiet space, its strange light illuminating the shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally in the corners. Alex's heart was pounding in his chest, but his curiosity had never been stronger. There was something about this robot, something far more than the sum of its parts. The words it had spoken, the mention of Earth's survival, of a mission, were like a weight pressing on him, making him feel both small and important at the same time. He had stumbled upon something much larger than a broken machine, something that could change everything. But what? What was the true purpose of this robot, and why had it been hidden away for so long? He had to know more. He could feel the pull of the mystery, the desire to uncover the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. Alex moved closer to the robot, his breath shallow as he examined the pulsing orb at its core. It seemed almost alive now, its light flickering in a pattern that seemed almost rhythmic, as if it were sending out a signal, waiting for a response. The words it had spoken earlier echoed in his mind. Protect Earth. Danger imminent. What did it mean by that? What danger? And why was the robot so insistent on protecting Earth? There were no clear answers, just fragments of a larger puzzle, each piece more confusing than the last. His fingers itched to reach out and touch the glowing orb again, to feel its energy, to understand what it was. But as his hand hovered above it, a strange hesitation gripped him. He had already activated the robot once, and that had set off a chain of events that seemed to be spiraling out of control. What would happen if he touched the orb again? Would it awaken something even more powerful, or would it reveal the truth he so desperately sought? The robot, now fully awake, turned its head slightly, its eyes focusing on Alex once more. For a brief moment, it seemed almost human, its gaze searching, almost pleading. It was as though it were trying to communicate something deeper, something beyond the mechanical language it had been speaking. Mission. The robot began, its voice now softer, less mechanical, but still tinged with urgency. Mission incomplete, core activation essential, but compromised. Failure imminent. The words sent a chill through Alex. Compromised. What did that mean? Had the robot's core been damaged, or was it something else entirely? And why was it failing now, after all this time? He felt the weight of its words pressing down on him. There was a sense of desperation in its tone that he hadn't noticed before, a vulnerability that made the machine feel less like an object and more like something alive. Alex swallowed hard, his thoughts spinning. He had to fix it, whatever it was. The robot's mission, its survival. Everything seemed to hinge on his next move. But how could he fix something he didn't fully understand? The robot had been dormant for years, possibly decades, and now that it was awake, it seemed to be breaking down again. The more he tried to fix it, the more questions piled up. Every step forward seemed to lead to a new, deeper mystery, and every new revelation felt like a piece of a larger puzzle that he couldn't solve. His mind drifted back to the robot's words. Protect Earth. It had said that twice now. What did it mean? Was Earth truly in danger, or was the robot malfunctioning, driven by some broken programming? Alex was a mechanic, not a scientist or an engineer, and this was far beyond anything he had ever encountered. He could repair machines, restore them to working order, but this was something else entirely. The robot's gaze flickered again, its eyes dimming briefly before brightening once more. It was still trying to communicate. Alex could sense that much. He took a deep breath and spoke again, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. What happened to you? What's wrong with your core? The robot seemed to consider his question for a moment before responding, its voice softer this time, almost as though it were speaking to itself as much as to Alex. Core compromised, it repeated. Mission, protection, failed. Alien threat, dormant, but not gone. System corrupted, humanity unaware. The words hung in the air, their implications sinking in slowly. An alien threat. The robot had been built to protect Earth, but from what? Alex's mind raced as he tried to process the information. If the alien threat had been dormant, then what had happened to it? Why was the robot still here, still functioning, if the threat had been neutralized? And if the threat wasn't gone, if it was still out there, what did that mean for humanity? Alex's heart thudded in his chest as a sudden thought crossed his mind. Was the robot part of some kind of defense system? Had it been created as a last line of defense, a fail-safe against something far more powerful? It didn't make sense. If the alien threat was dormant, then why had the robot been abandoned, left to deteriorate in a junkyard, forgotten by time? The room felt colder now, the chill creeping into Alex's bones. He could feel the weight of the robot's words bearing down on him. The sense that something big was unfolding, something far beyond his control. As if sensing his growing unease, the robot spoke again, its voice more insistent this time. Core activation required. Danger approaching. The urgency in its tone was impossible to ignore. The robot was trying to tell him something. Something important. And it was clear now that Alex was at the center of it. He had awoken the machine, set its systems into motion, and now there was no turning back. He stood there, frozen for a moment, staring at the glowing orb at the center of the robot's chest. The mission the robot spoke of was far from over. It was just beginning. And somehow, Alex knew that his life, and perhaps the fate of the world, was now intertwined with this mysterious machine. There was no going back. Whatever this was, it was real, and it was coming for them. The days that followed were nothing like Alex had ever imagined. The quiet workshop he had once considered his refuge had transformed into a place of constant tension, a pressure that hung thick in the air. Every time he approached the robot, the hum of its internal systems pulsed louder, almost as if it were alive, aware, and constantly waiting for something. The orb in its chest continued to glow with a soft, rhythmic pulse, a reminder of the mystery that had unraveled with a single touch. But now, Alex felt like he was being pulled into something far larger than anything he had ever anticipated. The words the robot had spoken, the alien threat, the dormant mission, the need for core activation, lingered in his mind like an echo he couldn't escape. Every time he tried to sleep, they haunted him. Protect Earth, danger imminent. But what danger? Where had this alien threat gone? Was it still out there, waiting for its moment to strike? Alex could feel it, the sense of something looming just beyond his reach, a storm building in the distance, too far off to see but too close to ignore. For the first time in his life, he felt truly small. He was a mechanic, not a soldier or a scientist, and yet somehow he had been thrust into a role he didn't understand. The robot, this relic of a forgotten past, seemed to depend on him. It had been waiting for someone to awaken it, someone to continue the mission it had been built for. But what was that mission? And why was it so important? The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the robot's internal systems. Alex had spent the past few days trying to repair the machine, attempting to stabilize its core, to fix whatever was wrong with it. But the more he worked, the more he realized how far beyond his skills this task was. The technology inside the robot was unlike anything he had ever seen, with circuits and components that defied understanding. It wasn't just a broken machine. It was a piece of something much larger, something that had been designed with a purpose he could barely comprehend. As he sat in front of the robot, carefully rewiring a circuit, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the task at hand. It was as if the machine was watching him, waiting for him to make the right choice. There was an urgency in the air, something he couldn't explain, but that gnawed at him nonetheless. The robot's voice, low, mechanical, but still filled with that strange sense of importance, echoed in his mind. Mission incomplete. Core compromised. Alien threat. The words were a broken record, looping in his thoughts, each repetition more desperate than the last. It was when he finally stepped back from his workbench and gazed at the robot, its glowing chest pulsating rhythmically, that he realized just how much he had come to depend on this strange machine. There was something about it, something that reached beyond his own understanding, something that made him feel like he was part of a story that had been written long before his birth. The sense that the past and the future were colliding, that this machine had been waiting for him, was almost too much to bear. He took a deep breath and walked toward the robot. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out to touch its cold metal surface. The machine seemed to react to his touch, its lights flickering briefly, then steadying. It was almost as if it was acknowledging him, recognizing him as a part of the mission it had been built for. Core activation required, the robot murmured, its voice low and urgent. Protect Earth. Danger coming. The words sent a chill down Alex's spine. He had heard them before, but now they held a new weight, a new urgency. He wasn't just fixing a machine anymore. He was part of something larger, something that could change everything. And as much as he wanted to walk away, to pretend none of this was happening, something inside him kept him there, tethered to the machine, to the mission. Suddenly, the workshop door creaked open. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected anyone. Not this late, not while he was in the middle of working on the robot. He spun around quickly, his hand instinctively reaching for the tool belt that hung by his side. But as he saw the figure standing in the doorway, his hand dropped to his side, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a man, tall, dressed in a dark suit, and wearing a pair of sunglasses that covered his eyes, despite the dim light in the room. His presence felt out of place, like a shadow in the corner of Alex's mind that he had never noticed before. The man's gaze flicked to the robot, then back to Alex. "You've activated it, haven't you?" the man asked, his voice calm, measured, and oddly emotionless. He didn't need to ask. It was clear from the glowing orb in the robot's chest that something had been set into motion. Alex's instincts screamed at him to say nothing, to keep quiet, but curiosity won out. "Who are you? And what do you know about this robot?" The man stepped forward, his movements deliberate and precise. "I know enough to understand that you've just triggered something that shouldn't have been awakened. That robot was not meant for you. It's a part of a larger system, a defense mechanism designed to protect this planet from an alien threat, one that's been dormant for years. But it's coming back, and it's not happy that you've interfered." Alex's pulse quickened. The words the man spoke were chilling, but they also confirmed everything the robot had said. The alien threat was real, and it was coming. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Alex's voice was sharp, his hands trembling slightly as he clenched his fists. "What do you want with this robot?" The man's lips curled into a thin smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What I want is irrelevant. What matters is that you've activated something you don't understand. And now, there are people who will stop at nothing to get what you've awakened." Alex's mind was reeling. People. Who were these people? The man's words painted a picture of danger, of forces Alex had never imagined, forces that had been lying in wait, watching, preparing for the right moment to strike. The robot's voice interrupted the tense silence. "Core activation. Mission. Incomplete. Danger. Imminent." Its voice was more urgent now, the words coming faster, as though the machine itself could sense the rising threat. Alex turned back to the robot, a sinking feeling in his chest. The situation was escalating, and there was no going back. The door behind the man creaked open again, and Alex saw shadows move, figures emerging from the dark. The threat wasn't just looming anymore, it was here. The man gave Alex a final, cold glance. "You've chosen your side. Let's see if it's the right one." He turned and walked toward the door, disappearing into the shadows, leaving Alex with nothing but the weight of his decision and the growing hum of the robot's core. Alex was alone now, standing at the center of something much bigger than himself. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew one thing. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. Alex stood frozen in the workshop, the weight of the man's words hanging in the air like a storm cloud on the verge of breaking. His mind was racing, each thought colliding with the next in a chaotic jumble of confusion and dread. The robot, still quietly humming in the corner, had become a focal point of a far larger mystery, one that he had never asked for, yet could not escape. His eyes flicked back to the man who had just left, disappearing into the shadows with a final cold remark. "You've chosen your side. Let's see if it's the right one." The door closed behind him with an unsettling finality, and Alex found himself alone, the faint buzzing of the robot's core, the only sound in the still room. It felt like an eternity passed before he could move, but when he did, his legs carried him instinctively back toward the machine. His gaze lingered on the glowing orb in its chest, now pulsating with an urgency that seemed to match his own racing thoughts. He had triggered something far beyond his understanding, and now the weight of his choices was becoming too much to bear. Mission incomplete. The robot's voice cut through the silence, its tone now more insistent. Danger imminent. Alex's fingers clenched into fists, frustration building inside him. The robot had been talking about this alien threat for days now, but what did it mean? Who were these people who had been waiting for the robot's core to be activated? And why was he suddenly the one in the middle of all this? All he had wanted was to fix a broken machine, to find something useful in the junkyard. But now, he was tangled in something far darker than he could have ever imagined. He took a shaky breath and moved closer to the robot. The glowing orb was almost hypnotic, and as he reached out again, he could feel the same pull from before, the same magnetic force that seemed to draw him to it. Something inside the machine was alive, something ancient, something powerful that had been lying dormant for far too long. Alex could feel it. He didn't understand it, but he felt it deep in his gut. The robot's chest glowed brighter as his hand hovered above it, and Alex knew, without a doubt, that the next step would change everything. He had come this far. There was no going back. He pressed his palm against the metal surface, feeling the heat emanating from the core, a heat that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his own heartbeat. Core activation required. The robot spoke again, its voice a whisper now, almost pleading. "Protect Earth. Mission incomplete." The words were a hammer to his chest, each one landing with a heavy thud. Protect Earth. But from what? What kind of threat was this robot speaking of? And what role did he play in all of it? The uncertainty clawed at him, but before he could dwell on it any longer, a sharp noise cut through the air. The door to the workshop creaked open again, and Alex spun around, his heart racing. This time, it wasn't just the man in the suit. This time, the room was filled with people, armed, serious-looking individuals who moved with a purpose that sent a chill down Alex's spine. They were here, and they were coming for something. Coming for him. For the robot. For whatever it was that he had unknowingly unleashed. "Step away from the robot," one of them said, a woman whose face was obscured by a mask. Her voice was cold, professional. She wasn't asking. She was ordering. Alex took a step back instinctively, his heart thudding louder in his chest. The robot, sensing the rising tension, began to react. Its core pulsed faster, the lights in its eyes flickering in response to the newcomers. The figures in the doorway remained motionless, but there was a palpable sense of danger in the air. It was as if they were waiting for something, like they knew something Alex didn't. The woman spoke again, her voice sharp. "You've activated it, haven't you? The robot. The core. You don't know what you've done, do you?" Alex's mouth went dry. He had heard enough of this. "You don't know what you've done." It was the same line over and over. But he didn't have the luxury of answers anymore. He was already in this, already deep in the middle of something he couldn't control. "I didn't mean to," Alex began, but the woman cut him off. "You don't get it, do you? The robot. It wasn't supposed to be activated. It was designed to protect us, yes, but there's more to it. You've unwittingly triggered a countdown to something much worse than you could ever imagine." The words hit Alex like a slap in the face, but it was the look in the woman's eyes, cold, calculating, that made him shiver. She was not afraid. She wasn't here to warn him or explain. She was here to contain him, to control what he had set in motion. "What do you want from me?" Alex's voice trembled with a mix of fear and defiance. He didn't know what he was asking, didn't know if he wanted an answer at all. But he needed something, anything, to hold on to. The woman stepped closer, her eyes flicking to the robot, then back to Alex. "We want the core. We want the robot. It's not yours to control. You've made a mistake, and now we're here to fix it." Fix it? Alex's mind spun. Fix it? Was she talking about erasing everything he had uncovered? About stopping the robot's mission? About protecting Earth, as the robot had said? He could feel it, the sense that something was slipping away from him, something bigger than he could grasp. The room seemed to close in on him, the faces of the armed strangers growing more menacing as they moved closer. The robot's core flashed more urgently now, almost as if it were calling out, responding to the approaching danger. There was no time to think, no time to make a decision. It felt as though the ground beneath him was crumbling, and he was powerless to stop it. But then, something inside him snapped. The fear, the confusion, the helplessness, it all shifted, crystallizing into something else. He didn't know what he had gotten himself into, but he wasn't going to let these people take it from him. Not now. Not after everything. Without thinking, Alex turned to the robot, his hands shaking as he reached for the core again. The room seemed to hold its breath. The pulse from the orb grew stronger, faster, as if the machine was responding to his touch. "Activate the core," the robot whispered, its voice almost frantic now. "Mission: protect Earth. Complete." In that moment, Alex understood. He wasn't alone in this. The robot wasn't just a machine. It was his ally now. He didn't know how, but he knew the next move would define everything. The countdown had begun, and Alex wasn't going to let it stop. The room was charged with tension, the heavy silence broken only by the faint hum of the robot's core, now pulsing with an increasing intensity. Alex's breath quickened, the air thick with an almost palpable sense of impending doom. The figures in the doorway remained still, watching him with cold, calculated eyes, but something had shifted. There was no longer any question about whether he would comply or not. The choice had been made. His fingers hovered over the glowing orb, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. It wasn't just about the robot anymore. It was about the fate of Earth, the alien threat that had been dormant for so long, and now, the very real danger that loomed closer with every passing second. The woman's cold voice echoed in his mind. "We want the core. We want the robot. It's not yours to control." But she was wrong. It was his now. Somehow, in a way he couldn't fully understand, this robot had chosen him. Or perhaps it was fate, an odd twist of destiny that had led him here, to this very moment. He could feel the weight of the decision in his chest. The core was alive, thrumming with power, with purpose, and it was asking him to finish what had been started long ago. He couldn't back down. Not now. Not when the stakes were so high. As his fingers made contact with the orb, a sharp surge of energy coursed through his body, and the room seemed to shift. The workshop, the cluttered walls, the piles of discarded tools, they all faded away for a moment. His vision blurred, and for a split second, he felt as though he were standing in the heart of a storm of light energy, and information rushing at him from all directions. His mind struggled to keep up, the data flooding in too fast, too much to process all at once. The robot's core wasn't just a power source. It was a gateway, a link to something much larger than any of them had realized. Then, as quickly as the rush began, it stopped. Alex staggered back, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he tried to steady himself. His hands were still shaking from the force of the surge, but his mind had cleared, and in that moment, he knew what had to be done. He had unlocked something more than just the robot's power. He had unlocked its purpose. The woman in the doorway, her eyes narrowing, saw the shift in the room, the change in the atmosphere. She took a step forward, her hand resting on the weapon at her side, her stance one of authority. "You don't know what you're doing," she said, her voice icy and unforgiving. "You've activated it. There's no going back now. The countdown has started." Alex stood his ground, his jaw clenched. He could feel the pulse of the core beneath his palm, the rhythm of its energy syncing with his own heartbeat. It wasn't just about protecting the Earth anymore. It was about survival, about stopping something far worse than they had yet to realize. The robot had been built for this moment, and it wasn't going to let anyone stop it. The woman's eyes flicked toward the robot, then back to Alex, her expression hardening. She clearly wasn't used to being challenged, much less being confronted with someone who had the audacity to believe in the machine, in its purpose. But Alex wasn't backing down. Not anymore. "What do you want?" Alex asked, his voice steady but firm. "Why are you here? What's really going on?" The woman's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You don't know what you've set in motion, do you? The core you just activated is a signal. It's a beacon. It's calling them." She paused, as if savoring the moment. "The aliens, the ones we've been watching for years. They're out there, waiting. And now, they know we're here. They know we've activated the last defense, and they won't stop until they get what they want." Alex's heart skipped a beat. It had been a theory, something he had been trying to piece together from the fragmented information the robot had given him. But hearing it from her, hearing the cold certainty in her voice, made it feel all too real. "You're saying they're coming. They'll come for the robot." Alex's voice was thick with disbelief, but his gut told him it wasn't a lie. The woman didn't flinch. "Yes, and they will stop at nothing to reclaim what was lost. You're a fool if you think you can stop them now. We've been preparing for this day for decades, and now you've just handed them the key." Alex turned back to the robot, its core still glowing steadily, as if it were waiting for him to make the next move. A surge of resolve rushed through him. The robot had been waiting for someone to finish what had been started, to complete the mission it had been built for. He wasn't about to let anyone take that from him. "We're not just sitting ducks," Alex said, his voice gaining strength. "If they're coming, we'll fight. We'll defend Earth. We're not just going to let you take this thing and run." The woman's expression darkened. "You think you can just fight them? Do you even know who you're dealing with? These aren't the kind of enemies you can beat with a wrench and a gun." Her eyes shifted to the figures behind her, who had begun to close in, weapons drawn. Alex's mind raced. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a fighter. But he had something far more valuable now. Knowledge. The robot had given him that. The awareness of what needed to be done. The countdown wasn't just a signal to the aliens. It was a countdown to Earth's final defense system activating. But it needed more than just the robot. It needed his help. "No, I don't know what I'm dealing with," Alex said, his tone firm. "But I know one thing. I'm not going down without a fight. And I'm not letting you take this." Before the woman could react, Alex reached for the console hidden beneath the robot's chest and pressed a series of buttons that he had discovered during his work on the machine. The robot's chest flared to life, and a deep, resonant hum filled the room. The lights in the workshop flickered wildly as the energy within the robot surged, and for the first time since Alex had found it, the machine seemed to wake up fully. It was no longer just a tool. It was a weapon, a force that could change the course of the battle ahead. The woman's eyes widened, her confidence faltering as the energy in the room built to a deepening crescendo. "You've sealed your fate," she whispered, her voice tight with anger. But Alex didn't hear her. He was focused on the robot, on the machine that had now fully awakened, its core glowing brighter than ever. A new sense of purpose flooded through him. They had started something, and now they had no choice but to finish it. As the doors to the workshop slammed open, Alex knew that whatever happened next, he was ready. The countdown had begun, and the battle for Earth had just started. The workshop was no longer the quiet, cluttered haven Alex had known. Now it felt like the center of a storm, the air crackling with the raw power emanating from the robot's core. The walls seemed to close in on him, the weight of the moment pressing down with the gravity of a world on the verge of change. His heart raced as he stood at the heart of it all, his hand still resting on the console of the robot, which hummed with energy, a beacon in the dark. The countdown wasn't just some abstract measure of time anymore. It was real. It was happening. The alien threat, once a shadow in the background of his mind, was now a reality. And Alex, for better or worse, had become the fulcrum on which the fate of the world balanced. The woman, the one who had tried to warn him, or perhaps manipulate him, watched with narrowed eyes, her hand hovering over the weapon at her side. The figures behind her, silent and imposing, seemed to close in with every passing second. She had expected him to back down, expected him to cower in the face of the unknown. But Alex wasn't afraid anymore. The robot had given him purpose, had shown him that there was something bigger than himself at play. It wasn't just about fixing machines anymore. It was about stopping an extinction-level event that no one had prepared for. "Stop it," the woman said, her voice tight with frustration. "You don't understand what you've done. This isn't a game." Alex turned slowly to face her, his grip tightening around the console. "I know exactly what I've done. I've activated the defense system. I've awoken the only thing that can stop this alien invasion, and I'm not going to let you take it." Her eyes flicked to the robot, now fully awake, its core pulsing with energy, its systems aligning with Alex's own heartbeat. The woman's face contorted with disbelief, a flash of anger passing through her cold, calculating gaze. She hadn't expected him to be this determined. She hadn't anticipated that someone like Alex, just a mechanic, an ordinary man, would be the one to stand between them and the fate of the world. "It's too late," she said, her voice cracking with urgency. "You've triggered the signal. They know. They're coming." She motioned toward the door, and Alex could hear the faint hum of something in the distance, something that seemed to resonate with the robot's energy. "I don't care if they're coming," Alex replied, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "We're ready for them." The woman's face hardened. "You think the robot is enough. You think activating some ancient core will stop them. They've been waiting for this. They've been preparing for centuries. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Alex swallowed hard, but his mind was clear. He had no illusions about the fight ahead, but the robot had given him something crucial: knowledge, power, and a sense of purpose. He wasn't alone in this anymore, and that was something no weapon or army could take away. The robot, sensing the tension in the room, let out a soft whir, its core pulsing brighter in response to Alex's words. It wasn't just a machine. It was an ally, a partner in this battle. And in that moment, Alex realized that it wasn't just about stopping the aliens. It was about protecting everything he knew, everything he loved. It was about fighting for the future of Earth. The air in the workshop seemed to hum louder now, the energy building to a crescendo, until the sound was deafening. The door to the workshop slammed open with a force that made the walls shake. Alex's heart skipped a beat as a figure emerged from the darkness, tall, imposing, with a presence that was as cold as the woman's, but infinitely more dangerous. It was him, the man in the suit, the one who had been watching from the shadows, the one who had said, "Let's see if it's the right side." His eyes locked onto Alex, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. "You're making a grave mistake," the man said, his voice smooth and deadly, like a snake ready to strike. "You've activated the core, but you have no idea what it will bring. The aliens, they won't be stopped by a machine. They've evolved. They're not the same as they were when this system was created." Alex stood taller, his feet firm against the ground, his hand still on the robot. "I don't care. They'll have to go through me to get to this robot. And I'm not backing down." The man's lips curled into a smile, but it was far from reassuring. "Then you'll die with it. All of you will." A chill ran down Alex's spine, but he refused to flinch. He was no longer the mechanic who tinkered with old machines for a living. He had become something else. He had become a guardian of Earth's last line of defense. Without warning, the figure in the doorway reached for a device at his belt, and the room was filled with a blinding light. The robot's core flickered violently, as though reacting to the intrusion, but Alex's hand remained steady. He wasn't about to let the man take control of the situation. In that moment, the workshop was transformed into a battleground. The light from the core flared brighter, illuminating everything around them in an otherworldly glow. The woman moved forward, drawing her weapon, but Alex wasn't looking at her anymore. He was focused on the man, on the figure that seemed to be the source of all this chaos. "You're not taking it," Alex said, his voice hard. "I'm not letting you destroy everything we've built." The man's smile faded, and his eyes narrowed. "You think you can stop this? You think the robot, this outdated machine, is enough to stop what's coming? You're nothing but a fool." Alex stepped forward, his heart pounding with a newfound strength. "Maybe. But I'm a fool who's standing in the way of extinction, and I'm not going to let you take that away." The man lunged, but as he did, the robot sprang to life, its limbs moving with fluid precision, faster than Alex had ever seen it move before. The energy in the room surged, the core now fully aligned with the robot's systems. It wasn't just a machine. It was a force, a weapon capable of changing the tide of war. The man staggered back, momentarily thrown off balance, and Alex seized the opportunity. He rushed forward, pushing the console's final sequence, a sequence that would activate the robot's full potential. The core pulsed one final time, and the air around them vibrated with energy, as if the entire workshop was resonating with the sheer power of the machine. And then, everything stopped. The man in the suit, the woman, and their armed forces were frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. Alex didn't need to say another word. The robot, its mission now clear, activated its full defensive mode, and the workshop was transformed into a shield, a wall of energy that the intruders could not break. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. The robot's core dimmed slightly, its energy now stable, as if acknowledging the task that had been completed. The countdown had ended, and the future of Earth was secure. Alex stood there, breathing heavily, his body shaking from the adrenaline. But there was a sense of finality in the air. He had done it. He had completed the mission that had started long before he ever found the robot. He had become the protector, the one who stood between humanity and the unknown. And as the first rays of dawn filtered through the workshop's windows, Alex realized that the real fight had just begun. The alien threat was still out there, but now, they would know that Earth was not defenseless anymore. They would know that humanity was ready to fight back. And Alex, once just a simple mechanic, would be there at the front lines, alongside the robot that had given him a new purpose. The battle for Earth was far from over, but Alex knew that with this machine, with this ally, they had a chance. A real chance. And that was enough.